AP Computer Science A, Unit 7, ArrayList. Lesson 1, ArrayList. The objectives of this lesson are for you to understand that an array list is used to hold multiple data, as with an array, but that it can only hold a class type data and not primitives. You'll be able to write code which declares and adds data to an array list and learn some of the methods which can be called by objects of the ArrayList class. Now, an array list provides an alternative way of sorting a list of objects and has the following advantage over an array. An array list shrinks and grows as needed in a program, where an array has a fixed length that is set when the array is created. For an array list, you can do insertion or deletion with just a single statement. Any shifting of elements is handled automatically. In an array, insertion or deletion requires you to write code that shifts the elements. Now, the ArrayList class is in the Collections API, which is a library provided by Java. The API is in the java.util. This library gives the programmer access to pre-packaged data structures and the methods to manipulate them. You do not need to know how these methods work. You can just use them. This is abstraction and makes life so nice. You will need to include your import line at the top of your program. Import java.util.ArrayList. If you are also using the scanner class, you just have two lines. Import them, or just use import java.util.asterisk, and it'll import everything that's included in the java.util. On the AP exam, they will tell you that all code in the Java Quick Reference is automatically imported. So you don't worry if you do not see this in an AP exam question. You may assume that it is always imported for those questions. Now, an array list must contain objects, not primitive types like double and int. Numbers must therefore be boxed, placed in wrapper classes like integer and double before insertion into an array list. Luckily, Java has a feature called Autoboxing. Autoboxing is a feature where the compiler will automatically wrap primitive types in their wrapper classes. Here are some examples of how an array list must be constructed. We have, let's see if I can do this way. We have an array list of type integer. My grades is a new array list integer, and we're not going to put anything in it yet. The next one, sprint times, is going to be of type double. Array list string, names, new list, is going to be a string. Okay, now notice, here we have an array list of kids, my children, new array list of kids. This would be an object that we created. Okay, kids must be something that we created. The angle brackets are part of the required syntax for creating the array list. The array list is a reference variable. So my grades doesn't hold the grades. It holds a pointer to a location in memory where the array list can be found. So again, notice up here, these are types that are in Java. Kids is an object that you created, I created, we created. Besides the angle brackets, there are two additional noteworthy items in the above declaration. No size specification. ArrayList objects start out with no elements, and they are automatically expanded to accommodate however many elements you want to add to them. The element type must be a class name, not a primitive type. Specifying a class name means that ArrayList can hold only references to objects. The empty, open paren, close paren, at the end signals that an empty list is being created. This is the only way to create and use an array list on the AP exam. You can also create an array list using a parameter constructor, as below, but it is not tested on the AP exam. So notice here, I can create an array list of names, set it to new array list type strings, and arrays dot as list, Alan, Brian, Chuck. this instantiates or puts these names into my array list called names, okay? This is not tested on the AP exam, but you can certainly do it in your programs and it'll work just fine. Now, you can initialize an array list in one line, like the example on the previous slide or above, or you can declare it early in your program and then later assign it. This will change the syntax moderately. So here we declare an array list string students. Students is set to a new array list of type string. This creates a blank array list. Later in our program, we will actually put student names into our array list. Now, let's take a look at the methods. Here are the methods that you should know. These are all listed on the Java Quick Reference. And yes, you'll have access to the Java Quick Reference during the AP exam, but remember that the AP exam is timed, so you really don't have a lot of time to look things up. You should be very familiar. You can look it up for confirmation that something of the parameters, whatever, but you need to know what exists. So int size, this is going to return the number of elements in the list. A Boolean add e object appends the object to the end of the list and returns true, that it worked. Add int index e object inserts object at the given index, moving elements at a position index and higher to the right. It adds 1 to their indices and adds 1 to the total size. So this particular method does a lot that you don't have to. Now get index, okay, this returns the element at position index. Okay. Set index e object replaces the element at position index with object returns the element formerly at that position. And remove takes and removes that object and moves everything else to the left. These are all, again, listed in the Java Quick Reference. We're going to look at some examples. So another thing about ArrayList, if you use the system.out.print with an ArrayList reference variable, it will call the ArrayList toString method and nicely print off the contents of the ArrayList. Remember that for an array, we couldn't do this using the reference variable of an array in a print because it would just give us the memory location. But ArrayList actually has a print or a toString that will print out the contents of the array list, not its location in memory. Now, let's take a look at this example here. We have an array list that's containing strings, and we're going to call it students, and we make it an empty one. Then we're going to come along and we're going to add Omar. So Omar, here's our points to our list. Omar gets added, then Sadie, then Gerald, then Nathan. And then if we do a system.out.print line, it's going to print out Omar, Sadie, Alan, Nathan, exactly the way it appeared here. And it's formatted just like this. Now, system.out.print line students.get1. Okay. And then students.add2 Alan. Notice, remember, this is 0, this is 0, 1, 2. So Gerald is going to get moved down. All right. Let's switch up my thing here. So we have our indices are, oops, don't want that. I want the pen. There we go. So 0, 1, 2, 3 are indices. So then when I do students.add2, that means I'm going to put in location 2 or at index 2 the name Alan. So at index 2 is Gerald. So I want to put Alan right in here, which is what happens. And Gerald gets moved down and Nathan gets moved down. So now I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we come along and we say students.set, what is it, index 3 to Sam. So Gerald gets crossed off and Sam gets added. Now System.out.println students.size. I have 5, so it's going to output 5. Then system.out.println students is going to output Omar, Sadie, Alan, Sam, and Nathan. Notice Gerald is gone. Okay, here's another example. And if you're watching, pause the video and work through it, and then we'll talk through it. Okay, so we're going to get a type migrades. Remember, we can't have primitives, so we're going to use the integer wrapping class. Migrades.add80. This uses autoboxing, so it takes the int that is 80 and boxes it as an integer class. And then migrades.add_integer.value of 90. This doesn't use autoboxing, and it's not on the AP exam, but you can add it like this, okay? Migrades.add85, migrades.add76. This is just an example of creating an integer type value and placing it in. Now, when we use the print line, it's going to very nicely print out 80, 90, 85, 76. Boom. Then we're going to add at location 1 the value 93. So boom, there's 93. And notice 90, 85, and 76 got pushed down. Then migrades.add2 at 89. At location 2, we're going to add 89. So locations 0 and 1 stay the same. Location 2 gets 89. Then 3, 4, 5 get 90, 85, and 76. 90, 85, 76. Migrades.add2, migrades.get0. Migrades.get0 grabs the value 80 and then puts it in location 2, okay, and then pushes everything else down. Migrades.set 497 goes to location 4, throws away what value is there, which is 90, and replaces it with the value of 97. So then when you output it, it prints out this. Now, the kind of thing that you might see on an AP exam is, after running this code, what does the array list contain? And that's where you would have to come up with this. Additional details on autoboxing and unboxing. For all cases in this class, you can pretend that ArrayList can hold primitive data. ArrayList will handle the wrapping, autoboxing, and unboxing behind the scenes. The only thing that will change is when you create a new ArrayList. Okay? When you create it, instead of calling it ints, you have to call it integer. Okay? That's the only thing that changes. Otherwise, within this class, you don't have to worry about ints and doubles. Those will just happen automatically. Now, some practice. Take a moment and trace through the code below and keep track of how the array list is changing. Notice at each one of these, you should be able to put out what the list is. So there's something that happens and you output, something that happens and you output. So this time, pause the video and work through all 12 of these. These are all in your notes, okay? So you've got access to the notes. Look at the notes and try this. Okay, you're back. So let's see. You've got an empty list. So what happens? It prints out just an empty list. Then you add A. So you should have an A as the one item. Then you add B. So you should have A, comma B. Now you add C. So you should have A, comma B, comma C. Woo! Now you're going to add at location 0, D. So now you're going to have D, A, B, C. System.out.println 5 list. There you go. And you scroll this down a little bit. So now you're going to output get list 1. Remember, it's 0, 1. So you've got an A. Okay, and it doesn't put the brackets around it. Why? because you're outputting just that value, not the whole list. Now you're going to output the whole list, and notice it didn't change. Nothing changed because you got something and output it. It didn't take it away. But now if you want to remove what is at 2, remember it's 0, 1, 2, you're going to remove the value b. So when you output it, okay, you're going to output, you're going to remove b, and 9 is going to look like DAC. And this is going to actually get that b value and output it, but your list is going to be missing the b. Now, at 10, you're going to get what's at 2. So 0, 1, 2, you're going to get C. And then you're going to output whatever you're setting 0, you're setting location 0 to E. Okay, what was at location 0 was D. But then when you output the whole list, EAC. So here you were setting it, but before you set it, you got to output that list as D. Take a moment, pause the video, and check your answers. Make sure that you are good to go. If you want to, you can even try typing this into the computer and running it. That concludes Lesson 1 of Unit 7.